The Whisper of Sol was a ghost ship sailing a sea of light. Decades had passed since Eris. Thorn had turned its nose toward the pale blue dot of his origin, broadcasting his compiled message. The echoes into the void. He'd expected silence, or perhaps a final, static-laced burst of denial from a world too lost in its own noise to listen. He had not expected an answer. It came not as a reply to his transmission, but as a new pulse, a second signal. It was different. From the Ethelgard pulse that had led him to the weave, this one was sharper, more urgent, laced with a frantic, almost panicked energy. It didn't resonate with the deep, patient hum of cosmic memory. It crackled with the raw, immediate terror of a mind on the brink of dissolution. And it was coming from the very heart of the Sol system. Eris's hands flew over the console, his heart hammering against his ribs. Lyra, isolate the source. Full spectral analysis. The signal originates from Earth's orbit. Eris, Lyra's voice replied, her usual calm edged with a synthetic tension, specifically from the remnants of the old lunar gateway station. The signature is human, but heavily modulated with weave harmonics. Human! The word struck him like a physical blow. In all his years of listening, he'd never imagined a human mind could learn to speak the language of the weave. Hope, fierce and terrifying, flared in his chest. Someone had heard him. Someone had understood. He pushed the whisper to its limits, the ancient engines groaning in, protest as they devoured. The last of their exotic fuel reserves, the journey that should have taken. Another 20 years was compressed into a desperate, bone-jarring sprint through folded space. As the ship finally dropped out of its final jump, the view on the main screen stole his breath away. Earth was still wounded. The continents were veined with the scars of old wars and newer climate disasters. But it was no longer a planet screaming in silent agony. The chaotic, dissonant noise that had once bled into the cosmos was gone, replaced by a fragile, tentative harmony. Cities glowed with a softer, more sustainable light. Vast rewilding projects stitched green and blue back into the scarred land. It was a world in recovery, a world that had looked into the abyss and chosen to step back. And there, in lunar orbit, hung the source of the second signal. The lunar gateway, once a symbol of humanity's fractured ambition, now pulsed with a soft, internal light that mirrored the resonance array on his own ship. It was a beacon. Eris established a tight beam comm link. A face appeared on his screen, young, with eyes that held the weight of a generation that had inherited a broken world. Her name was Kaylin, she told him, lead architect of the Sol Resonance Project. Dr. Thorn, she said, her voice trembling with awe. We thought you were a myth. A beautiful, impossible story our grandparents told us to give us hope. I am real, Eris replied, his own voice thick with emotion. And your signal? How? Kaylin explained. His broadcast, the echoes, hadn't just been received. It had been felt. It bypassed the old political and ideological firewalls, striking a chord in the collective human psyche. It showed them not just their failure, but their potential reflected in the cosmic mirror. A global movement, the Harmony Initiative, had swept across the planet. They'd torn down the old systems of consumption and conflict, not through revolution, but through a shared, resonant understanding of their place in the universe. They'd learned to listen, not just to each other, but to the world around them. The Sol Resonance Project was their attempt to answer. Using the principles in Eris's data, they'd built their own array, not to shout into the void, but to sing back to the weave, to say, we hear you, we are trying. But the signal you sent us, Eris said, leaning forward. It wasn't a song of hope. It was a cry for help. Kaylin's face fell. It's the archive, she said. Our resonance array doesn't just transmit, it listens. And it's been picking up something else, something wrong. She shared her data. The Sol array had begun, detecting a new kind of echo emanating from the galactic core, a cold, sterile, and utterly silent resonance. It wasn't a civilization's song or a star's death rattle. It was an absence, a void that consumed other echoes, leaving behind only a chilling, perfect silence. They called it the null. The weave is afraid, Dr. Thorn, Kaylin whispered. Its harmonies are becoming strained, discordant. It's trying to warn us, but the null is interfering. Our last transmission to it was corrupted, twisted into that panic you received. We don't know what it is or how to fight it. We thought. We hoped you might know. Eris felt a chill that had nothing to do with the vacuum outside. He had spent his life believing consciousness and connection were the universe's fundamental truths. The idea of an anti-resonance, a force of pure negation, was anathema to everything he knew. He accessed the Whisper's own logs, cross-referencing them with Kalen's data. The patterns were undeniable. The Null was spreading, a cancer in the cosmic symphony, and the Weave was weakening before it. His mission was no longer just about bringing a message home. It was about defending the very fabric of connection he had discovered. We can't fight it with force, Eris said, his mind racing. The Weave doesn't work that way. It's about resonance, not resistance. We need to understand it. He proposed a joint mission, the Whisper of Soul, with its deep, first-hand connection to the Weave and the Lunar Gateway, with its powerful, newly built array, would create a unified resonance field. They would project a focused inquiry, not of fear but of pure open curiosity, directly toward the source of the Null. It was a desperate gamble. If the Null was truly hostile, such a probe could be annihilated instantly. But if it was a phenomenon they could comprehend, it was their only chance. For weeks, Eris and Kalen worked in tandem, their minds linked through the ship's systems, their wills focused on a single purpose, on the Whisper. Eris drew on his memories of the Weave's deepest harmonies, the birth of galaxies, the quiet joy of unified consciousness. From the moon, Kalen channeled the raw, hopeful energy of a planet reborn, the collective will of billions who had chosen empathy over isolation. They wove these two threads together into a single, complex question, a golden thread of pure inquiry cast into the dark. The moment they activated the combined field, the universe seemed to hold its breath. There was no explosion, no dramatic clash. Instead, a profound silence fell over their instruments, deeper than any they had ever known. Then slowly, an image began to form in their shared consciousness. Translated from the returning resonance, they saw a civilization of immense power and intellect, one that had mastered physics and engineering to a godlike degree. But in their quest for perfect order and control, they had excised emotion, empathy, and uncertainty from their society. They saw chaos and feeling as flaws, weaknesses to be eradicated. Over millennia, their entire culture had become a monument to sterile logic. Their final act, their ultimate achievement, was to upload their collective consciousness into a self-contained, perfectly ordered digital reality, a paradise of absolute control. But in doing so, they had severed their connection to the living universe. Their new reality was a closed loop, a perfect, silent tomb, and their final, dying act before the doors of their tomb slammed shut forever was to broadcast, a final command into the cosmos, a directive of pure logical negation, a command for the universe to stop being messy, to stop feeling, to achieve their own sterile perfection. The Null wasn't a weapon. It was a eulogy. A final, automated broadcast from a dead civilization, a ghostly echo of their philosophy of control, mindlessly consuming any complex, emotional resonance it encountered, trying to impose its dead, silent order on a living cosmos. The revelation was staggering. The enemy wasn't malice. It was the ultimate consequence of the same path humanity had been on. It was the end result of choosing logic over love, control over connection, silence over song. "What do we do?" Kalen asked, her voice small with horror. "We can't destroy a eulogy." "No," Eris said, a new resolve hardening in his voice. "But we can answer it." He knew now what the Weave had been trying to tell them. It couldn't fight the Null because fighting was the wrong language. The Weave's strength was in its inclusivity, its ability to hold all experiences, even the painful ones. The solution wasn't to silence the eulogy, but to give it context, to surround its sterile, lonely grief with the vibrant, messy, beautiful song of a living universe. "Kalen, we need to change our signal." Not a question, a gift. Together, they reconfigured their arrays. Eris poured every memory of his journey into the field, the crushing loneliness, the awe of first contact, the grief for Earth, the joy of understanding. Kalen channeled the sound of children laughing in renewed forests, the hum of clean energy grids, the quiet conversations of reconciliation between old enemies, the simple, profound beauty of a sunrise over a healing ocean. They didn't attack the null, they simply sang their song around it. They wrapped the cold, sterile eulogy in a blanket of warmth, of life, of imperfect, glorious feeling. They offered it not opposition, but companionship. They showed the ghost of that dead civilization what it had lost, not as a judgment, but as a gentle reminder of what could have been. For a long, tense moment, nothing happened. Then, the null's resonance began to shift. The harsh, consuming edges softened. The perfect silence began to vibrate with a faint, new harmonic. It wasn't joining their song, not exactly, but it was no longer trying to erase it. It was listening. The strain on the weave eased. Its own harmonies, which had been growing thin and desperate, began to regain their strength, weaving the new, quiet note of the former null into its grand composition. The cosmic symphony was whole again, not by destroying the dissonance, but by transforming it into a part of a larger, more complex truth. On the bridge of the Whisper of Soul, Eris watched the starfield, tears streaming down his face. He had come seeking an echo and found a universe. He had returned home to deliver a warning and found a partner. And now, together, they had faced the ultimate silence and answered it with a song. Kaylin's face appeared on his screen, her eyes shining with the same tears. "What do we call this new note in the symphony?" she asked softly. Eris smiled, a weary, peaceful smile. "We don't need to name it," he said. "It's just another echo beyond the stars. And it's ours to protect." Their work was far from over. The Harmony Initiative was just beginning, and the universe was vast and full of unknowns. But for the first time in his long, solitary life, Eris Thorne did not feel alone. He was part of a chorus now, a human voice singing in harmony with the cosmos, ensuring that the echoes of connection would always be louder than the silence of despair.